No, you can very much go outside. Well, if you've done a good negotiation on your 360 deal, what you are saying to the label is, if you bring in a project, you get 25% on it, but if I bring in the project, or my manager brings in the project, you don't get 25%, right? So if you've negotiated that, you also get branded sponsorship agents. There is always somebody that will come in and offer these kind of services. So for example, you could go to get a sponsorship agent who would just go and target particular brands for you and say, X artist is available for brand sponsorship, what can you offer? You see what I mean? So in that circumstance, it would probably only involve the label if they wanted to use a recording, because the recording rights would be sitting with the label, right? But if they just wanted the artist, say, to turn up at an event and do a meet and greet, or speak to competition winners, or something that was a personal services type thing, that wouldn't necessarily involve the label at all. It would just be negotiated by manager and lawyer.
And does the label sort of try and limit those other
they get very iffy, Sony in particular. They seem to think that they really ought to be muscling in on everything that comes your way. But as I say, if the contract says that they don't have the exclusive sponsorship rights, then they can't stop us. But political reasons, we can't throw them a bone,
Bit of a backtrack. You were saying earlier about session musicians and how the rights there are kind of changing. Have you ever represented session musicians? How does that?
Yes. On the whole, session musicians don't need lawyers that much. Because they tend to do one-off sessions. They sign Musicians Union standard form, which is that they get paid a fee for their performance, and that's it, right? And on the whole, those are standard form contracts, so they don't tend to need legal advice on them. They can't afford the legal advice on them because they're fixed fee things. If you were a Musicians Union member, you can get free legal advice from the MU anyway. Sometimes a session musician is more, it's a career, and then they might have a lawyer. Session musicians have come into their own in the last 10 years because of the increase in performance rights. Changes in the law through Europe meant that performers had the same rights as copyright owners to prevent what happens with their music. And that's not just the featured artist, but that's also the session, and to some extent the producer. So there is a pot of money that, say, a TV company pays for an annual right to use a recording, and the artists between them are entitled to half of that pot of money. And they divide that up between them, for the big chunk goes to the featured artists, a smaller chunk goes to the session musicians, and a baby chunk goes to a producer who's also done some performing. Right? So there is a little bit more work involved, and another new source of revenue for performers, if you like. The trick with that, though, is they just have to register with Public Performance Limited and get their details into the database there. You do not need lawyers for that, but it is so crucial that you just put your details in, and there is money there waiting for you. And so many artists don't do it. So if you go, go to the PPL website and put, get yourself on their system, put details in of all the recordings you've ever performed on, then there will be money coming your way. Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing to do with recorded music, but you know how you were saying, between 2008 and 2011, like live music, kind of like kept the music industry afloat, basically.
It did.
So my question is kind of on venues and how our legislation has changed, like making it, more difficult or easier. So things like Night and Day getting loads of complaints from for noise and other venues for the same reason, and loads of bars doing music now, but like they stay open like until like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. whereas venues like it's a curfew at 11. So I'm just wondering like what you think is like the next big issue, what's the main issue now, because the law's kind of changing quite a lot around like even like licensing I don't think you need one now if it's less than 200 people. And that changed. I was in 2010, I think it changed. So
Well, the live music act was slightly more recent than that, but you
2012,
think,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, let's see, 5 years ago we went to, this is like a pendulum, 5 years ago we swung too far in favour of red tape and restrictions, right? We had a whole succession of things that partly driven by health and safety, so bouncers had to be licensed and have proper training, securities regs, right? So all of a sudden you had to have all your bouncers and venues on licenses, which cost the venues to train and to put the bouncers on. So that was red tape, small venues could do that. Then we had all the changes to the licensing, liquor licensing, which had an impact. The initial restrictions on the live music were appalling because it meant that overnight almost we lost all the small venues because it became too difficult to license for, you know, sort of small venues to license music economically. And there was a big lobby, mostly from British Music Rights and Musicians Union, to counter that and say, come on guys, you've got to give us a bit of slack here. Hence the Live Music Act that came in, which we're still really seeing play out. It seems to be freeing up venues a little bit, but I think the economic downturn, number of pubs closing, plus the bad press that came with those over restrictions has meant that people that did used to serve music have gone out of that business and they're not getting back into it. So it is, at the grassroots level, I think we still have some issues around being able to get music in lots of venues. Is that going to change anytime soon? I suspect not, to be honest. We've had our kind of crack at it, you know what I mean? It took so much lobbying to get that revised Live Music Act in. It really did take massive amounts of effort. I can't see them having another go at it anytime soon. But I've been proved wrong before. So I said the copyright extension would never come in for recordings. Wrong. So I might be wrong. But if you ask my opinion, I think we've probably seen about all the changes for the good of the industry as we're likely to see in the short term.
Cool. Thanks.
On the same sort of topic, you were saying you think that, well, it's becoming quite obvious that there aren't many big sort of arena, stadium live artists coming through the charts and stuff at the moment. It's a lot of the artists and their legacy artists. What do you think is the future for that? And do you think the kind of high-end live industry is just going to fizzle out?
I think there are some real problems there. I mean, Live Nation is heavily in debt. AEG is heavily in debt. We are seeing a lot of consolidation going on, of festivals being bought up one by one, you know, to sort of consolidate in one place because the size of them makes more sense commercially. We've got SFX buying up everybody inside. We have AEG saying they're backing out of live. They're not really, but they're kind of, their interest is in more the venue. They own the venues. It's real estate that really drives AEG. Live Nation did those very expensive forays into supporting artists like Madonna. They probably did okay on her live shows, but it didn't turn into Live Nation as record label, for example. I heard one of the Live Nation guys saying that in order to make money on their gigs, they have to sell something like 97% of tickets. Now that's a hell of, you know, that's a tiny margin if you think about it, right? So I think they do face challenges. All is not, I mean, it's not lost in the sense of people of my age will always say, oh, that, you know, you'll never find another John or you know. It's not true, because Adele will fill a stadium. The Arctic Monkeys probably. But, you know, we have artists that will fill stadiums. But whether they are being created in enough numbers to fuel growth of the kind that we've had in the last 5 years is debatable, I think.
I think what we'll do, we'll have to start drawing this to a close, and I know you all want to go and pick up your arts manager things, and it's going to shut relatively soon.
I don't know what an arts manager is, but go pick them up, whatever.
It's their marks, basically, for their placements. Should we make use of the last 2 questions then?
I was just going to elaborate and say, do you not think that the majority of bands filling out UK stadiums are probably US artists, and therefore that could be potentially damaging? You know, you've got Rihanna and I don't know, whatever, Taylor Swift and people like that who are coming and doing big shows. Whereas, like you say, you probably listed Arctic Monkeys and Adele.
Mumford and Sons.
Yeah, you know, there's a few, but I think there's a lot of them are US artists as well. Do you think that's detrimental?
It has always been us, I think, you know, but I don't have the stats to hand, but we had the biggest penetration of UK artists into the American charts at the end of last year than we've had in something like 15 years. So it is going both ways. Whether it is at that, you know, big stadium stage or, you know, the slightly smaller tier of US